By 2026, a specific pattern has emerged across European ballot boxes. From France and Italy to Scandinavia, right-wing coalitions are securing electoral majorities by making an explicit promise to voters. That promise centers on one highly polarized concept: remigration. Most voters hear that word and assume it refers to standard deportation, the process of removing individuals who cross borders illegally. But the policy architects pushing this concept are advocating for a different strategy. These coalitions have capitalized on demographic anxieties. Following years of localized integration failures and persistent debates over national identity, a growing segment of the electorate feels culturally displaced in their own cities. European nations are now exploring how to actively throw the demographic engine into reverse, aiming to reduce immigrant populations that have resided in the country for years. This animated diagram illustrates a three-tiered ladder of severity for immigration enforcement, moving from standard legal practices at the bottom to systemic demographic shifts at the top. The first step is standard deportation. This is a strictly legal mechanism used by almost every government to remove specific individuals who have broken laws or failed to secure asylum status. Move up a rung and you reach voluntary return. At this level, states introduce financial incentives, literally paying immigrants to leave. Countries in Scandinavia have already used these cash-for-return policies. The third and final step is remigration. This abandons the individual, voluntary approach, instead targeting broad demographic groups for organized, often involuntary repatriation. Looking at this spectrum clarifies the current debate. True remigration requires redefining who belongs in a country, separating standard border control from systemic demographic engineering. To understand why policymakers are willing to climb this ladder of severity, we have to look at the domestic pressures they face. This bar chart compares the fiscal input of immigrant demographics against their welfare utilization in several key European nations. The data reveals a consistent financial strain on state resources over the past decade. When we layer in social metrics, a correlation emerges between this welfare data and localized friction points, specifically integration failures and regional crime spikes. Proponents of reimmigration point directly to these numbers. Those statistics are driving public opinion. Mainstream polling across Europe shows a hardening desire among citizens to prioritize national sovereignty and social cohesion. For the politicians championing reimmigration, the theoretical end goal is to restore historical demographic majorities. They argue this ensures long-term cultural survival. In their view, the economic and social costs of forced integration have reached a level the state can no longer effectively manage. Taking this theory from the debate stage to actual law introduces immediate logistical realities. This line graph projects the immediate economic reaction, a steep drop in national GDP, intersecting directly with a widening gap in the labor market. Vital sectors like healthcare and construction face instant labor shortages when large demographics are suddenly removed. And then there is the logistical hurdle of statelessness. When we look at the breakdown of bilateral agreements, many targeted populations have no home country willing to accept them back, leaving millions in a state of legal limbo. Pushing those groups out based strictly on origin violates established international human rights law, forcing a state to abandon treaties signed decades ago. Domestically, targeting specific demographics invites accusations of state-sponsored discrimination. It alienates minority populations who hold full legal citizenship but share the targeted backgrounds. To execute a true reimmigration policy, a nation must actively dismantle the international human rights frameworks and domestic economic structures that stabilize it. As of 2026, total reimmigration remains a fringe ideological goal. No Western nation has fully implemented Step 3. Yet, the presence of the idea has successfully shifted mainstream policy toward more restrictive enforcement. We are already seeing the line between voluntary return and systemic pressure blur in places like the UK and Scandinavia, creating a quiet reality of state-pressured exodus. Western nations are now weighing whether the pursuit of cultural cohesion is worth the potential economic fallout and moral compromise. Whatever path they choose, the political consensus that has favored high immigration levels since the mid-20th century is facing its most significant challenge in decades. Reverse migration is no longer confined to radical theory. It has become a defining geopolitical battleground for the future of Western identity.